Now we're going to be doing a lower body stretch, but is this something you would do as a warm-up or a cool-down, or could be used for both?
It can be used for both. So as a warm-up, you can just hold these stretches a little bit shorter. You don't need to hold stretches for a long time during your warm-up. We want to make our stretches a little bit more dynamic in nature. So we'll show you guys how to do that. And if it's after your workout, you can do a little bit more of a static stretch, holding for 1 to 2 minutes, really focusing on sinking deep into your restrictions.
Perfect.
Awesome, guys. So what we're going to do here with our lower body stretch routine is we're going to focus on hitting all areas around the hip joint. So an often overlooked area is stretching our groin. So people talk about tight hip flexors all the time. People talk about tight hamstrings. People talk about doing pigeon poses or glute stretches, but oftentimes we overlook the adductors of the groin muscles, which are very important. So what I'm going to get Nikki to do here is she's going to go knees wide. I call this hockey goalie stretch. It's also a frog pose in yoga, very similar to that. And all I want her to do is rock back and forth with her pelvis. This is great for a warm-up drill, just for opening up those hips. So you're feeling really tight and you're about to have a squat day or something. This is a great day, just a great drill to kind of open up those hips. We can focus on doing anterior and posterior pelvic tilts, really focusing on opening up that pelvis over those femurs through various ranges. Another tip I like is let's go up onto your hands, Nikki. Keep your knees wide. Now bring your both hands over here. And now what she can do is by bringing her hands over here, she can focus on almost twisting her pelvis this way. And that's gonna help open up her right groin a little bit extra, okay? So she can focus on that dynamic motion of twisting, or she can just do a hold if this is maybe more of a cool down, and she can do that both sides, and she can feel the difference with each one. Okay. Focus on the twist this way. Okay, so whichever way her hands are going, she's focusing on the opposite hip and focusing on doing a twist through her pelvis. So our first stretch was hockey goalie stretch, which is going to focus on the shorter muscles of the groin. Now we're going to stretch our longer muscles of our groin with long groin stretch. So we're going to make sure your foot's flat ideally, though you can play around with foot position. The key with this is trying to square out your pelvis as best you can, both sides. If someone has a really tight hip, you might actually notice that one side likes to elevate quite a bit. So we want to focus on being nice and square. And then we can now give us a nice rock back and forth, really focusing on opening up this groin muscle on this side. So the hockey groin stretch focuses on both sides kind of equally, except when you add in the twist. This is a great way to isolate that groin, and especially if you have lots of tightness all the way down to your knee, this is an excellent stretch to help open up the groins. Good. The next stretch we're going to do is just a hip flexor stretch. I have Nikki standing here just to focus on the aspect of posterior tilt of the pelvis. So going to an anterior tilt of the pelvis. So a lot of times we find ourselves in this position a little too much. So what I want Nikki to do is really focus excessively on drawing that pelvic bone up. In the top position here, it really allows us to get that pelvic motion easier than at the bottom. And now I want her to just sink down all the way, holding as much tension as she can. And when she gets to the bottom, she's not going to relax the tension. She's going to keep that tension, but hold the stretch. Relax into the stretch, but hold that tension that the pelvis has created. And then she can really focus on opening that up. If she wants to make it a little more dynamic, she can kind of push forward into hip extension a bit and back and make it a little bit more dynamic, or she can just do a hold if she's cooling down and wanting to open things up after her workout. Perfect. Okay guys, so now what I want to go over is stretching the glutes or stretching the hip with a common position that's called pigeon pose. So this is often what we see a lot of fairly flexible people do with pigeon poses. They'll sink into this position, a lot of hip flexion, they'll sink deep, looks easy, they look super flexible. But I'm going to show you 2 ways to make this stretch a little bit more targeted to some of the areas of the hip joint that we need to stretch out. So let's come on back up. So now what I want to do here is, can we get Nikki to come forward a little bit? Can this top femur be fairly vertical? Okay. And now from there, can she sway her pelvis to the side? So now the pelvis is to the side. Now can she focus on twisting into that hip with her pelvis? And that's really gonna help, imagine, opening up this posterior aspect of the hip by going into hip adduction, which is going this way, and then twisting into it is gonna help open up some hip rotation as well too. So this is a great way to open up that posterior hip. That's gonna target things a little bit more than just sinking deep into that pigeon pose that most people do. Okay, so now we're gonna go over another way to do pigeon pose, which is a little different. So the first way we did it was focusing on hip adduction and internal rotation. Now what we're gonna focus on is hip external rotation, okay? So what I wanna do with this one, we're gonna get Nikki set up. So a lot of people do with this is they'll jut their knee out to the side. What I want is I still want this to be at 90 degrees. So this should be directly facing forward, and this should be at 90 degrees. Now what I want to do from here with Nikki is focus on that pelvic twist. So she's going to focus on twisting that pelvis. It's actually okay if the knee is not supported on the ground here, guys, because we're trying to leverage into that hip with as much external rotation as we can. If you do feel pain on your knee, you can put a yoga block here if you really need to. But we really want to focus on getting that stretch to that hip in this position to maximize our external rotation. So it's just two different ways to stretch pigeon pose, which are going to be a little bit more targeted than the classic just sinking into that base position.